All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really interesting and honestly pretty provocative theory that's been making waves online. It's all about achieving financial privacy by operating through something called a private trust. So, let's get right into it.
Wow. Okay, so this whole idea, this entire philosophy, it really kicks off with this incredibly bold claim. This comes from a speaker who calls himself a common law expert. And the whole argument is, look, there's a secret way to set up your life, your assets, everything, so that it's completely private. The big question is, right, how on earth could that actually work?
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to follow the logic step by step. First, we'll look at the big problem this whole thing is supposed to solve. Then, we'll tackle this wild idea about our legal identity. After that, we'll dig into the legal philosophy behind it, check out the actual solution they're proposing, and finally, we'll see why the people who believe in this think it's such a massive deal.
All right, Section 1, the public system problem. The thinking here is that before you can even talk about a solution, you have to understand the problem. And that means seeing the entire system in a totally new way.
And here it is. This is the first and, let's be honest, the most jaw-dropping claim that the United States isn't actually a country. The argument is that it's legally a federal corporation. Now, this isn't just wordplay for them. For the people who subscribe to this theory, this single idea, this reclassification, is literally the key that unlocks everything else.
So where does this corporate idea come from? Well, they point to a very specific piece of U.S. code, Section 3002. They hold this up as the smoking gun, the proof that your relationship with the government isn't civic, it's commercial. It's a business deal. Now, it's super important to say here that most legal experts would tell you this code is just about administrative stuff, how the government sues people and gets sued. But in this worldview, it's interpreted as the absolute bedrock of the entire legal system.
Okay, so if you accept that first premise that the government is a corporation, then that leads you right to the next big idea. And this is that every single one of us has not one, but two identities, a public citizen and a private human.
All right, get this. The theory goes that your name, when you see it written in all caps, on your driver's license, your birth certificate, a bank statement, that's not actually you. According to the source, that's a fictitious entity, a kind of corporate dummy, a straw man, that the state created so it could do business with it. It's completely separate from the real, living, breathing you.
And this difference is absolutely critical to the whole theory. You've got the public citizen on one side, that's the all-caps name. This entity, they say, is subject to all the government's rules, regulations, and taxes. But then you have the private human, this is the real you, who they argue operates under a different system called common law, holding unalienable rights and, this is the key, the power to keep all your assets totally private. So the whole game is figuring out how to live your life as the human, not the citizen.
Which brings us right to the legal backbone of this whole strategy. What is the foundation that makes all this privacy stuff possible? Well, according to the source, it all comes down to something called common law. Believe it or not, the entire legal argument seems to hang on one single Supreme Court case from way back in 1906, Hale versus Henkel. Now, the case was originally about whether a corporation could plead the Fifth, but proponents of this theory zero in on one specific quote from the ruling. They believe this quote carves out an absolute, undeniable right to privacy for individual people.
And this is the line they point to. The source interprets this to mean that a private person, the human, owes absolutely no duty to the government to tell them anything about their business. Period. For them, this isn't just some vague idea. It's a legal shield, a fortress wall that blocks any kind of government investigation.
Okay, so how do you actually use this? How do you claim these rights? Well, here's the twist. According to the source, you can't just go hire a lawyer. They argue that lawyers are part of the public system. They only know statutory law. So the only way to do it, they insist, is to become self-taught and self-governed. You have to learn this stuff for yourself and take the power back.
All right, so we've walked through all the theory, the corporate government, the two identities, the common law stuff. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts. What's the actual practical solution they propose to make this all happen? The main tool in the toolbox here is something called an irrevocable private trust. Now look, irrevocable trusts are a real thing. They're used in estate planning all the time. But the claim here is that this specific kind of trust is a special common law vehicle. It's designed to be totally separate from your public identity. The idea is that once you put your assets in this trust, they become legally invisible to the IRS, to courts, to everyone. And there's a very specific process they lay out. First, you create this special trust. Then, and this is a really key and frankly controversial part, you get what they call a private EIN from the IRS. The claim is that some EIN numbers are for private entities, not public ones, which, by the way, is something the IRS itself does not say. Once you have that, you only do business from your trust to another trust. They claim doing this actually generates tax credits that you can then turn around and sell.
So if you follow this path, the benefits they claim are, well, they're huge. We're talking 100% private transactions. No taxes on those transactions. You can create tax write-offs by loaning money to your own trust. You generate tax credits for your tax forms, and your assets are totally protected from probate court when you die. It's basically pitched as the ultimate financial fortress.
And to show you the supposed consequences of not doing things this way, they bring up a really famous example. A cautionary tale, the Michael Jackson estate.
Just look at that number, $700 million. That's how much the IRS has been fighting his estate for in back taxes and penalties, more than a decade after he passed away. It's a staggering figure.
So why did this happen? The source's diagnosis is really simple. He used the wrong kind of trust. They say his trust was revocable, meaning he could still change it. In their world, that makes it a public tool that left his entire estate wide open and exposed. The argument is that only their specific kind of irrevocable trust, where you permanently give up control, could have built that unpierceable private shield to keep the government and the courts out for good.
Okay, so let's zoom out. What's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter? What's the ultimate message behind this whole framework?
This quote really gets to the heart of the mindset. Focus is not what you do. Focus is what you refuse to do. The idea here is that true power comes from what you decide to ignore. They say things like politics, the 24-hour news cycle, even sports. It's all just a big game designed to distract you, to keep you from focusing on what really matters and to keep you feeling powerless.
So, the final message, the big call to action is this. Stop wasting your energy on things you can't control. Instead, turn that focus inward. Pour all that energy into self-education, into learning about your rights, about these financial structures, because according to this philosophy, that is the one and only path to real wealth and true freedom.
And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? This whole theory draws such a stark line between the established, regulated financial world most of us live in and this other world of absolute private freedom. It really makes you wonder, where is the true line between the system we have and the privacy we want? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.